And now we come to, when I was first watching this, the most, not despairing, but the most depressing, down moment of the film when I was first watching it. The scene where Gollum finally separates Frodo and Sam, where, Frodo is convinced that Sam has eaten all the food, and that they're never going to make it to Mordor, they're never going to make it home because they're going to starve to death. And of course Gollum's the one who actually throws him off the cliff and everything, and Sam finds him later, so... But yeah, and it's really sad to watch, and it's a very, very visual performance by Sean Astin, probably the best of his whole performances in the trilogy and possibly of his career. Though I have to admit Rudy was still pretty good, and The Goonies was fine too. But that doesn't matter. That's way in the past too. Hey, what do you know? Another movie, kind of like Stand By Me, but okay. Yeah, and it's really, really, as the scene goes on, he just becomes progressively sadder and sadder and more desperate because he doesn't want to lose Mr. Frodo, because that's what Gandalf said to him, is don't ever leave him by himself. And yeah, it's a sad, sad scene to see unfold, and it's fantastic work on his part. Okay, and then, of course, the few Gondor soldiers left who have anything near a gut in their belly decide to take on Osgiliath, as suggested by the steward. And as he's sitting in his room and he's kind of just, eating, and he's like, I can't remember what it was. He's like eating like a rabbit or something, and at the same time they're charging, and Pippin kind of sings this kind of despairing song, and Billy Boyd actually has a nice voice on him. He could be in a musical, but yeah, there's a little clip where his chin starts to, there's a little bit of blood on his chin, and it's at the same time that these soldiers are going into battle, and the same bloodshed, as he finishes his meal, that's the bloodshed that has happened, and double the bloodshed of the bloodshed that will come with the impending war. And it's really, really nice little symbolism there. The third big symbolism thing in the trilogy. I've gotten a thing in about each film, but yeah, this is another impressive one. Okay, and then all at the same time now, Rohan is building up their army now. They've got the Rohirrim at their side, they've got soldiers and everybody, and they're recruiting more and more in this epic fight with Gondor to take down the enemy. And, we see lots of people and everything, and we see that Éowyn and Éomer start to argue about, should Éowyn be there, should she go and fight? And of course, she and Merry are actually in the same boat because they're both way underestimated. A woman and a hobbit, and they're a little similar. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, just that little connection. And of course, they end up riding together when they go into the final battle. So, or at least the battle for Gondor. So, yeah. And then there's a scene, of course, where Elrond comes and he brings the reforged sword of that Isildur had. I can't remember, did they have a name for it? If they did, I forget it. Where he brings the sword, and Aragorn, goes to the army of the dead so that he can, raise that army, because he hears about the story, which is, Isildur never, granted them rest, and so they blah 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 the story with that. And so what happens is he and, of course, the rest of the trio, Legolas and Gimli, they aren't just going to let him go by himself. So, yeah, it's a nice little scene where he won't be alone. And then the battle for... and then once they get into the catacombs, if you will, and they find the King of the Dead, who will, of course, lead the army of the dead. It's a nice little scene where he reveals he's got the reforged sword, and that he is Isildur's heir, and that he, is pretty much their leader, and he'll fulfill their oaths of once the job is done, they will, they will be free and finally laid to rest. And of course, the battle for Minas Tirith is one of the most grand, epic fights or battles or whatever you call them in cinematic history, at least recent cinematic history, anywhere from, say, 1970 on up. It's one of the most impressive visual-wise. It's one of the most impressive, just screen time-wise. It's one of the most impressive in the way that it's set up, in the way that it just keeps building and building and building. It's certainly one of the greatest things to see on the big screen, is just this whole battle unfold. And of course, Gandalf steps up as leader, and once, Denethor, he knocks Denethor out pretty much and says, and Denethor at the same time saying, flee for your lives. And John Noble is so great at this, and then Gandalf steps up and they start to fight, and then Pippin actually, in a nice moment, of course all this time, still represents death. He's always going to represent death, He's brought death to Faramir, and it's amazing that Gandalf and Denethor have survived all this time. And he actually saves Gandalf. So he's representing death the other way now. He represents death not for the heroes, but for the bad guys. Finally, we get him to see him do something good. And it's fantastic. There's little moments like that interspersed throughout the movie, where the audiences just stand up and cheer. So, hooray for Pippin. Hooray! Hooray! Now, if there's one scene, or one little part where I want to see more than the Battle of Minas Tirith, it's Shelob's Lair, man. It's one of the best scenes in the entire trilogy, because it is thrilling, and it's exciting, and it leads up. There's another scene kind of after it that's kind of close to the same thing, which is the biggest reveal of almost the entire film, as a character comes back. Of course, we'll get to that in just a second here, but you're gonna be laughing your pants off or something. There's this great scene, of course, where Gollum leads him into Shelob's lair, and he pretty much abandons him and betrays him. And then after Frodo makes it out, he tries to take the ring from him, and supposedly he dies. Gollum falls, and there's no way he's surviving, And of course, in the theater, I had not read the books by then. I was just like, oh my god, they actually killed off somebody! And then back to the Battle of Gondor, the gate is breached, and, the tide, really starts to set in that the bad guys are about ready to dominate all of Minas Tirith and just take the city, kill everybody. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the great scene where Shelob, comes up on Frodo, attacks him, and gets ready to, save him for later. And here in the corner, the camera backs up, and it's revealed that Sam is back. That he turns around, once he realizes, of course, that the Lumbus bread, or Lemnis bread, whatever they pronounce it, was thrown off the cliff by Gollum, and I suppose he ate it all just to get back there in time. But, sorry, that's a fat joke. And he says, let him go. And it's one of the best, reveals of the entire film. Is, where it's slowly the camera's backing up away, Shelob's here, the camera's back here, and then suddenly the little light comes up, and we know who it is. It's freaking Sam. He's here. He's gonna save Frodo. It's epic, and they have this really great fight. And I remember, I know this is a little side point here, but I remember there's a video game on PlayStation 2 back then, before PlayStation 3 or Wii, of Lord of the Rings, the game, and you have to fight Shelob. That level was a bleep. It was hard. It was hard. It was hard to fight Shelob. It got worse as the game went on, but that level, oh my god. The number of times I had to, refrain myself from screaming at the top of my lungs because Shelob would kill Sam. Oh, it was just hard. God, I hate that game, but I love it. I love playing it now. And then, of course, Pippin is released from Denethor's services after he tries to claim that Faramir, who has been drugged back, is not dead. Everybody believes he's dead. And then all seems lost. Everything is going downhill fast. And of course, Rohan arrives. Finally, they're here. And Theoden gives this rousing speech, one of like 20 in the film. And it's fantastic. I remember I read part of the book, or I skipped ahead to one part in the book where I was kind of watching the movie one day, and I don't know how long ago was this, probably 5-6 years ago actually, and I wanted to see how close the speech was, and it was almost word for word the speech, and it was excellent work, of course, by Bernard Hill, the actor's name. And if you didn't know, he also appeared in Titanic, which was also another 11 Oscar award-winning movie. So I guess if you want a lot of Oscars, you cast him. Good work. And then there's they charge. It's chaotic, of course, and there's a lot of chaotic charges in Lord of the Rings, you know, in their battle scenes. And this one is actually one of the more triumphant ones. Of course, the biggest triumphant one is the end of the Two Towers. This is second, only to that. And it's a great battle so far. And it's about to get better. It's about to get better. You watch this. Okay, crazy Denethor the Steward finally meets his death when Pippin finally, you know, finds Gandalf. He's been looking for Gandalf and says, you know, he's going to burn Faramir, and but he's still alive. And they break into the crypt, and they, of course, Denethor almost sets the thing on fire and burns his son almost, and, you know, but Pippin gets him out. Denethor gets knocked into the thing by Shadowfax, the horse. Probably the best scene where you're tempted to laugh, but it's kind of serious too, so you can't laugh. I laugh at it today, but in the theater, everybody's like, oh, you know, trying not to chuckle because it's kind of serious, because then you see Faramir waking up, and then you're just like, oh my god, he actually is alive, you know, and because there's really no clear sign before that he's alive. And then, of course, the city seems safe, and the Oliphants arrive. Of course, you remember the Oliphants. There was that great scene in Two Towers where there's just the majesty of these things. It's like the Empire Strikes Back, the AT-ATs, the walkers on the Battle of Hoth, you know, and of course the battle for Pelennor Fields is what it's officially called. But yeah, it's almost like Echo Base all over again, like Empire Strikes Back. Except this is the third movie, so it should actually be more like Endor, but okay. Actually, it kind of is, you know, but let's not get into that. We got to get going here. I think I'm taking forever here. Okay, and then Eowyn and Merry, it's really a nice motif to Empire Strikes Back. Because remember the scene where Luke is, you know, he uses his grappling gun or whatever to get up on the walker. He plants the bomb and he drops down and the walker, you know, the head explodes, which is strange how he sets it in the stomach of the thing and the head blows up. Then it, you know, dies. They take out an Oliphant by, you know, slicing up its legs, you know, as they go in between them, and it's amazing, just the visual effects here. Even for 2003, they're jaw-dropping. We really believe they were giant frickin' elephants. I mean, back then we were dumb, but yeah, today we're just like, look at that obvious CGI. Of course, we're hoping The Hobbit does it a little better, but technical advancements, what do you get after 10 years?